But Catherine and Wendy are right up the street from me. I'm in Virginia.
So since we're actually about 5 minutes past the kickoff, let's go ahead and just start the session, and then as others jump in, we can kind of catch them up to where the conversation's headed. So there's all the links. Hey, everybody, welcome to Risk versus Reward Roundtable session. Hope everybody's having a great world workplace so far. And to explore our topic today, we have Denny, Marianne, and Heidi facilitating. Marianne Flores is the Director of Global Real Estate Operations and Integrated Solutions for IBM, and she oversees a portfolio of over 70 million square feet and is responsible for IBM's contract management and supplier relations and tools and technology supporting global real estate and facility management activities. Most recently, she's been leading the global real estate team's focus and response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And next we have Heidi Shetler with us, the Director of New Market Development for NewPig. And for the past 28 years, Heidi has been the eyes and ears of the company, having visited hundreds of plants and facilities to help EHS professionals find solutions to their environmental health and safety issues. And she serves on the board of the National Floor Safety Institute, NFSI. And last but not least, we have Denny Mulgrew with us, the engineering director at Sodexo. And as a strong engineering professional with a passion for FM, Denny has extensive experience contracting, operations, maintenance, developing maintenance strategies, and deploying CMMS technologies in an array of market segments, from commercial applications to mission critical environments. So I've dropped some links. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to all the facilitators. Welcome to the attendees. Hi, Scott. Thanks for joining. I've dropped some helpful links in the chat, and I'll repost that here to make sure everybody can see that. We have a roundtable supplement guide in IFMA's Knowledge Library, so be sure to check that out and add some additional context and content to these topics. And with that, let's just jump right into the conversation. So risk of overreacting is as risky as doing nothing. True or false?
Absolutely true. Particularly today, I think, we're overwhelmed. Facilities managers are overwhelmed by the vast amount of information that's out there. Some of it very sound, very good. Others say questionable. And not that the vendors intend to mislead, but a lot of the data needs to be vetted. And as facilities managers, we have to rely on the industry professionals out there, like ASHRAE, like the CDC, like who are out there and vetting this type of information and looking at this stuff. They're the research scientists. They're doing the deep dives. Also to look for third-party validated data. If it's tested in accordance with with either ASTM or any of these other certifying agencies, then the information is far more reliable and it's something we can actually base decisions on. But because if not, we use the term paralysis by analysis. If you're overwhelmed with the data, you'll end up doing nothing. So you can either overreact to misguided data, or you might end up doing nothing because of the overwhelming dearth of information presented.
Yeah, Denny, that is so true. And, I think it's really been proven out recently with the whole pandemic, right? We went through the whole, and every company did, when this first hit in March, do you send everyone home? Do you take, what's the risk? We didn't know what the risk is, and assessing the risk. And do you overreact? And so, there's been that constant throughout, the last several months in the actions we take and assessing the situation. And now, as you said, there's so much information out there and sifting through it to, really get to the science. And I know from our standpoint, in IBM, as, we look at risk reward, we're really taking the opportunity now as facility managers, as operating our buildings, to really take a look at where can we invest now to minimize the risk and maybe drive some of the things that we were looking to do for a long time. Building systems, air ventilation systems, as well as the technology we use in the building. And that's why, Heidi, I was so, I'd be really interested in your views, with the health and safety aspect of your role, how you're seeing that.
So we've seen a lot of just because we deal with so many end users. So I'm not a facility manager, but I deal with people like yourselves. And the biggest challenge they had was really when there is a positive case, right? When there is a positive case within that facility, what do I do? So Denny, you talked about paralysis from analysis. So how wide do I go out in my touch points to say, I've got to quarantine this person, that person, and this person? And then how do I make my employees, my visitors comfortable that I did an adequate job of cleaning, right? So that's where the communication, and what we have found is, as a facility manager, the more you can communicate of what you're doing, the more comfortable people become. Understand what are going to be the rules you're going to follow, right? From a CDC standpoint, are we going to signage? Are we going to, what type of rules are we going to follow, and then post them and communicate them? So that's been the biggest thing that I've seen, is the lack of communication of what you're doing as a facility manager or operations to make the employees, visitors comfortable to come through that door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the question, yeah, the question we seem to see a lot is, okay, this has been going on since March. What have you done since March? You know, what have, we know what you're posting, you know, what you're communicating now, that these are the procedures and policies and actions we're going to take today. But what have you been evaluating? What have you discarded? What have you, because well, how come you didn't look at this? How come you didn't look at that? Why aren't you doing X, Y, or Z? And a lot of times in our communication, we have to step back and say not just what we're promoting or recommending, but what we've also evaluated and said we weren't going to do that for this reason or that reason.
Yeah.
So to Heidi's point, it is all about communications, because they want to know, what have we done since March to make these facilities safe for their employees, their visitors, and business to resume. You know,
and you know, the one thing that we often heard a lot about was, if I have employees that go out and come back in. So it's the ones that are working outside and are traveling around that have to come back in and out. So we do a lot of like service centers, for example, and that seemed to make people very nervous. And then the whole temperature checking, and it really wasn't only about temperature checking, but making sure whether this hand sanitizing, I can't tell you how much of a hot topic that is, and making it accessible to people throughout your facility so that they can feel comfortable that, hey, I just talked to Denny and I didn't think he looked real good, but I'm going to go and make sure I have a quick way of washing my hands or sanitizing in this, an area, or having that in those meeting rooms for those that have a break room, have those things there for the employees, because they'll clean themselves. They truly will, because that will give them that comfort that it was done.
And, Heidi, to that point, and the whole communication aspect, if you're not communicating with your employees, your population in your buildings, they're hearing things. They're hearing lots of communication. They're all experts on cleaning and air systems. And so, and some of it may be based on facts. Some of it may be based on just what they're hearing, people talking about. And so we have to be out there communicating and educating our population, because our population is going to come back to the workplace much more educated, much more focused on cleaning. In the past, where we wanted our cleaning, for example, to be behind the scenes, you didn't want it to be visible. Now we want people to see us cleaning. They want to see that.
Right.
Hi, Julie. Welcome. Sorry to interject, guys. I just want to make sure we get a chance for all the audience to contribute as well. And hi, Julie. Saw you just popped in. So we have some helpful links in the chat. And then if everybody wants, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot here, but if you have any questions, you can drop those in the chat panel as well. And if you want to turn on your video, we'd be excited to have everybody's smiling faces on camera. So go ahead, guys.
No problem at all. I think one of the things for those of us who might have a few miles on us is to look back, and in the context that nobody's ever gone through this before, that clearly we're in uncharted waters when it comes to how to handle this pandemic. But if you look back, there's a number of different things as facilities managers that we have dealt with in the past. We can draw on lessons learned. As a young engineer, and this was shortly after the energy crunch was very big, And we went to a point where we shut down, tightened up on ventilation that we were actually providing to the office spaces. Well, the result of that was a sick building syndrome. And so for a lot of us in live through those different, the pendulum swinging one way or the other, we learned a lot of things going through those various aspects about what we could do to take care of indoor air quality. Not unlike today, that what are we going to do at the air handlers? What are we going to do in the local, the visible, to Heidi's point about having things more visible, that they can see what's being
Yeah.
cleaned, they see how things are being done. Maybe if you've got these electronic signage boards, you can things to communicate to your clients as they come back in, that this is what's been done since you've been gone. This is what we're doing actively to promote and create a healthy environment. So look back at the lessons learned from what we've done in the past. SARS-1 was not as tremendous an issue, but it's very different from what we're dealing with today. SARS-1 was only infectious if during the people that had the outward expression of the symptoms, whereas asymptomatic people can transfer SARS-2, making it far more likely to create the pandemic that it did. So when people say, well, we didn't do this for SARS-1, that's true, but we didn't have the same issue with the rampant transmission that we're faced with in today's world.
Denny, you mentioned, I think earlier about science and understanding the science. One of the things that was pretty problematic when customers would call in when they were looking for product, right? Because we have a supply chain issue here, right? When it comes to certain cleaning materials, is they didn't understand the cleaner's properties to select the right one. So when I looked at all the cleaners that were out there, sometimes you have to select the right cloth, the right vehicle to clean with, to really get it to perform correctly. I mean, how many times did we go into grocery stores and they were just using whatever was there in a cellulose towel? There wasn't dwell time, there wasn't enough cleaning, but it gave you that false comfort. And so that was one big thing when we were dealing with customers and they were looking for wipers, for example. They didn't understand the chemistry of their cleaner, and you got to understand the chemistry of your cleaner so you can put good SOPs in place as to what you use and how you use them. So
that's a great point. If you look at the EPA list of approved chemical products for these various things, but you have to read down a little bit further. You have to dig deeper. You spend more time than just a soundbite, because a lot of those chemicals are good for, say, front of office or back of office. Maybe they're not approved in food direct contact or anything that would be in a kitchen. But you also look at how they're applied, because just because they're on the list doesn't mean that the chemical itself can be used in any fashion that's been under consideration. It's a very defined process and for a very specific purpose that the chemical was actually approved. It could be, to your point, the applicator itself as to how it went on, the length of time it needs to be in contact for it to do its full efficiency. All these different things factor into its efficacy, and if you don't look at the science and look at it carefully, you're going to miss some very important points.
I have a oh, go ahead, Marianne. Go ahead.
No, I'd be curious as to, as we look at the current environment and addressing the risk we're seeing in the current environment and certain actions we're taking, the longer term implications or benefits we may see by certain actions we're taking now, beyond the COVID, once we get past the vaccine and everything, and I know from our perspective, we're looking at using technology. So we're able to do intelligent cleaning, focus on, reserving desks so that we know which desks need to be cleaned. That's in response to COVID, but it's something we've always wanted to do. And it's got long-term benefits to us. I'd be curious if Heidi or Denny, you have any examples of things that you're looking at, or anybody in the audience as well. Anything you want to share along those lines, the long-term benefits we may see as we address the current risk.
I've got one that leaps to mind, front and center. And it serves to benefit indoor air quality. It serves to benefit energy utilization in facilities, and that is just keeping the coils clean. I mean, it's a standard, simple maintenance practice, but using technology, using things like ultraviolet irradiation to keep those coil surfaces clean, you get better heat transfer. There's less pressure drop across the coils because they are clean. So the energy performance of the fan systems is going to be far more efficient. Those have significant long-term benefits, and the indoor air quality aspects moving forward. Not just the cleaning for COVID, but a lot of aerial bacteria that can be remedied in that same fashion. That's just one example that leaps to mind. And I think Heidi had one too.
Mine is probably a little simpler that we found specifically in the education market is it gave the industry a time to declutter, right? So we all have a bunch of stuff sitting all over the place, and those are all surface areas. So it was amazing to me when we went into some of these universities, we went into some of these school systems, the fact that they were starting to minimize, because then I don't have as much to clean. And so it was basically like you were cleaning out your closet. So that was something that I saw come around when you had to get rid of things or move things around. It was the decluttering that is coming about, so that we can be flexible, to Marianne's point about moving our work centers, where it is that was cleaned on Wednesday, I might go over here on Monday. So having that flexibility within the work environment.
Absolutely.
But I did have a question, and again, on my side, that I don't really know much about it, but I hear some people use it. Do any of you fog after you have a positive case of any employees? Do you use foggers by chance, or are you all liquid wipe systems? Anybody have any experience with foggers or use them?
I was going to say that we do have some with electrostatic spraying. Is a process utilized. And I think if you look at the airline industry, a lot of them are utilizing that, and a type of fogger as well. And it's more of a preventive thing for them. I think the assumption is that if somebody had come on that was COVID positive, and if you take care of that, then for the people that come behind them, they're less likely to be infected by that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I see, Julie, you said that you have. Do you want to share your experience with foggers? Julie Miller?
Yes, as a library, of course, we're closed to the public now, so we're only using it should we have a staff member come in and tell us they're positive, and then we would use their space and take care of their space. But for a little while there, we were doing it weekly, routinely, and then when we needed to, as someone came in positive.
Yeah, I hear it mostly when positive cases, and it's a way to get, I mean, because honestly, we got the human factor of cleaning. I know I'm working late a lot of times, and I see our cleaners, I'm like, yeah, they're not touching someone, it's not like the high touch points scream at you, right? And there's walls and doors and cubby holes and all that stuff. So it was a way to basically give employees comfort that more surface area was being addressed, or more,
There was a lot of perception that came into play with that too. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I see Wendy has identified that her building engineer won't allow the foggers to infiltrate the HVAC system. And I think it raises the point that whatever we do in one area potentially can transfer to others. So if we're talking, and this goes back to the conversation about the use of chemicals, whatever chemical you're using, you have to consider the overall environment. How safe is it? You don't want to create another problem by trying to solve one.
That's right.
And so you have to look at the big picture and say, if I address this area in this particular thing, it may be back into through recirculation, back into the HVAC system, and then it's going to create an issue somewhere else where somebody might be sensitive to that particular chemical. So you have to be very cautious about that kind of thing. That to the extent that the building engineer can isolate an area and fog it, and then to the extent that you can run that area with 100% fresh air, that after you're fogging and cleansing and your chemical treatment is over with, that you can purge it. I'm a big fan of purging these areas. So if you can afford to do that. Now, if your building is open, that's one thing, but maybe after hours, if there is such a shutdown period for you, Wendy, that you might be able to do that and do a purging aspect after hours to eliminate that fogging situation.
Looks like Wendy said no. She's 24/7.
Oh, she's 24/7.
That's a problem.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yep. So fully understand that, as are a lot of the critical environments that I've played in, and certain Marianne's been involved in.
yeah.
Definitely, definitely.
And just a reminder to everybody, if you want to drop your questions in the chat, you can. One thing I wanted to kind of explore that we had also talked about was the reward side of it. So we obviously have this massive pandemic, and there's ample risk that surround it. But as you guys were exploring this topic, what rewards are we seeing that can potentially come out of it?
Oh, we're seeing so many, it's, I'm telling our team, don't let a, negative situation go to, or a crisis go to waste, right? You know, for the first time in a long time, we're at the forefront. Everybody wants to know what real estate and facilities
Right.
is doing. And so we have a lot more visibility than we've ever had with the C-suite. So an opportunity to get investments to do certain things, infrastructure wise,
Right.
when you talk about the building systems, we're able to get the increased investment to make those changes, things that we've always wanted to do. And then the technology aspect, we've been working a long time in improving the technology. We have the data collection capabilities, the IoT aspect of our buildings.
Right.
And it was a slow process. Even, we're an IBM, but still, it's a little bit, you have to, make your case. And we certainly have our case to be made right now to get the support to do what we need to do in our buildings. So long-term rewards, as I said, addressing the current environment, but they're things that we wanted to do before, and now we've got the support to do so.
Hey,
And,
John,
and a
welcome.
lot and a lot of the items are simple, and they're not very sexy. They're not real, high profile, but simple things like just basic building maintenance, and staying on top of that. If you look at the ASHRAE recommendations for COVID, all throughout their recommendations, attention to the details, attention to the maintenance practices. These are the kind of things that have long-term sustaining benefit. And so whatever initiatives we're doing now in response to this particular aspect of the COVID, and they're very significant, there's long-term benefits that are going to be there for years and years and years to come. I mean, we're learning we can get by with less space. That's one thing. We're learning that we can be a more fluid society, that we can be a more virtual society, relying on technology to communicate with people. There's a lot of things that we're putting in place now that if you had said 10 years ago, this is going to be the office of the future, people would have looked, sure. But now, to Marianne's point, is that this pandemic has brought forward the need for a lot of these technologies to come forefront now. They're going to benefit us for many years to come, but now they're front and center to becoming business as usual.
Yeah, and Heidi, your point about decluttering. I mean, that's such a simple one, but it's one that's yielded so many benefits for us. Something we've been wanting to do. Clean desk policy. We've been wanting people to implement it, and now we have the support. We're able to do it because we have to do it to ensure proper cleaning. So that's such a perfect example that you gave.
And I can tell you, we struggle with the clean desk policy here. And there's about 500 people within our buildings, and sometimes you got to get people you got to change behavior, right? You got to change behavior, and that takes time, but you've got to communicate the change and the value of the change and get some of those early adopters in kind of supporting what you're trying or what you're doing. And in turn, they'll help to, I hate to use the word incubate the rest of the group, right? And be consistent, because if you don't think Johnny's talking about what happened in his department or in his building to another building, you're sadly mistaken. So that's the other thing that we find is being consistent, or if you make that change, explain that new information came to the front, right? We're changing this operating procedure because we understand things differently. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Very cool. And so how would you, as Denny had mentioned, kind of combat that paralysis by analysis?
How would I So I always say that it's really starts with a good plan and an objective, right? So a lot of times you've got to, and you've got to you got to let the details drive the decision, not the opinions or the feeling, right? So back to Denny's point about science. So, because everybody is an expert in this, because they have kids in school, because somebody's in a hospital, but you have to take control of it and show that you're an expert in that area, and just make it really, really simple. I mean, wash your hands, right? It's really wear a mask. Don't come to work sick. How many people have come to work sick for years or gone places sick? So now we're just practicing a little bit different hygiene and being a little bit more conscious of our neighbor, right? I'm sick. I don't want to get close to you. And it's just down to the basics. Go ahead.
And think of the results of that, right?
Yeah.
Think of how much money companies lost from sick time,
Right.
in the past. And the more now, people have become used to washing their hands, hygiene, cleaning surfaces, staying home when they're sick. The benefits to business and is huge from a cost standpoint.
Right.
Yep.
Reduce sick time.
That's a good point.
And thank you so much. I hate to cut it short. It was really great conversation, but we are at time. So I want to thank all the attendees for participating. I want to thank all the facilitators for all the great content. And if you want to follow up with our facilitators, you can connect with them over on LinkedIn or also visit their booth in the Expo Hall. And I wish everybody a very good rest of your world workplace and happy holidays, everybody.
Happy
Thanks so
holidays.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Who is